Hi, everybody. So I'm Kiersten Garside, the Community Data Coordinator at Water Rangers. And today I'm going to be talking about the Lake Erie Rangers and how we can use it as a model for building trusted community data through user-informed tools. Collecting water quality data can be an astonishing amount of work. I really don't think this is a surprise to any of you here. First, you have to decide what, where, when, and how to test. You check your equipment, make sure it's calibrated correctly. Then you are finally ready. You go pack your car, you drive to your site. Maybe it's close to you, maybe it's an hour away. You hike through mud, you push your way through the bushes and scramble down those steep or rocky shorelines just to access the water. Sometimes you're lucky and it's sunny, and sometimes it's cold and raining, which we know are the best times to collect water quality data. You record your metadata, then conduct each and every water quality test and record your results. You pack up and drive away on to the next site. And then, years later, when analyzing the data, you discover someone misplaced a decimal. And suddenly, a water quality trend that you thought was meaningful wasn't real. Or worse, a real problem was hidden inside that error. If you're lucky, the error is correctable. If you're not, you remove the data from the dataset, getting rid of all of that hard work from the volunteers. And the thing is, this really simplified story about the water testing process isn't about careless people or poor data collection. It's a story about systems. For a long time, community science has been evaluated based on whether volunteers can produce good enough data for decision making. And while this perspective is changing, I think what we've been asking is the wrong question. What if the better question is, are we designing systems that help communities succeed in collecting good data? For the past 10 years, Water Rangers has been working alongside communities to build better tools and systems, empowering communities to collect good water quality data. And over the years, something has become very clear. The challenge wasn't just collecting more data and filling data gaps. Communities were running into barriers at every single stage of the process, in finding the right tools that they need to answer their questions, in ensuring that the quality of the data is good that's coming back, and in making sense of what the results actually meant that they were getting. Because the challenge isn't just engaging communities to collect data and fill those data gaps. People overwhelmingly do want to help. It's building systems where people can trust and use the data that community members have put so much care and effort into collecting. And we've learned that community science becomes significantly stronger when the tools, data systems, and the interpretation are designed together, with the people using them supported by scientists and experts. So through the Canada Water Agency's Great Lakes Freshwater Ecosystem Initiative, we've put this principle into practice through a community monitoring program, the Lake Erie Rangers. And Laura, you'll see yourself featured here. Lake Erie is experiencing growing pressures from road salt, persistent elevated nutrient concentrations, and harmful algal blooms. This is amid changing seasonal conditions and those high variability in recent years. Yet many communities still don't have the consistent local data that they need to answer basic questions like, is our water healthy? Is it changing? Is it safe to swim? So the Lake Erie Rangers project was designed to fill this gap. Using the Lake Erie Rangers project as a framework, I can see three critical components of a successful community science system. Tools, they need to be accessible, validated, and able to answer the community's questions. The data, it needs to be quality assured, easy to understand and act on. And the people, communities, partners, and researchers all working together towards those common goals. Water Rangers doesn't deploy off-the-shelf kits. We design, iterate, and validate the tools in our kits in real field conditions with volunteers and expert advisors. And that co-design piece has really always been essential. Our kits are shaped through field testing, feedback, and iteration with the people actually using them. So through the Lake Erie Rangers project, we are working with the community and partners to develop new community testing methods to tackle freshwater concerns that communities in the Great Lakes Basin consistently raise: road salt contamination, excess nutrients, and swimming health risks. I'll dive into each of these new methods a little bit deeper. We apply millions and millions of tons of road salt every winter, and that salt doesn't disappear. It dissolves, it separates into its sodium and chloride ions, and then runs off into our waterways and infiltrates into our groundwater. And there have been numerous studies and reports identifying this as a threat to ecosystems, people, and our built environment. Yet our fresh water is still becoming saltier. For the last few winter seasons, we have worked with the Lake Erie Rangers to pilot a community accessible field test method for chloride to identify hotspots where intervention is needed. And one of the biggest concerns with chloride testing is its seasonality, because testing only during the warm seasons doesn't give us a complete picture of the conditions, as most chloride enters the waterways during those freeze-thaw events and spring melting. So designing a test kit that volunteers could use safely in the winter and shoulder seasons was an absolute must. The winter test kit we've developed includes a throw bucket to make it easier to safely collect the water sample from a distance, our conductivity meter, and hatch chloride test strips that can quickly measure chloride concentrations in the field. We've had multiple organizations advise us on the development of this kit and sampling protocol and have validated the method against traditional methods with excellent comparison results. The Lake Erie Volunteer Science Network has also officially adopted the chloride test method and protocols into their standards for all groups. And while this kit was piloted in the Canadian portion of the Lake Erie watershed, other community groups across the Great Lakes Basin, like the Nordic Institute, are piloting the winter kit and sharing their feedback with us so that we can continue improving it. Moving on, one of the biggest concerns for Lake Erie is the persistent high nutrient concentrations, which lead to nuisance and harmful algal blooms. Community accessible methods for testing nutrients have been developed, though the detection limits are often too high for the Canadian freshwater context. We had been looking for a community method of testing phosphorus for a really long time when Dr. Shel Fraser from McMaster University spoke at an IAGLR conference back in 2021, I believe. With the Lake Erie Rangers project, we found an opportunity to collaborate. For those of you who didn't have the pleasure of hearing Dr. Shel Fraser and her PhD student Carolina speak, I really highly recommend asking them a bit more about the test method and ongoing research. They have essentially developed a test method which uses periphyton algae growth to estimate total phosphorus, and results so far are really promising. We are continuing to pilot this test method this summer with our volunteers, working to understand the challenges that communities may have when doing this test alone. And the third concern we have focused on is one almost everyone immediately understands. Is the water safe to swim in? For fresh water, E. coli is typically used as the key indicator of recreational water safety. And while there are well-documented methods for E. coli monitoring, these typically require a full lab setup and are expensive for communities, so not every beach can be tested. We have developed a home lab kit using Roth Biosciences R cards that communities can use to get a coarse estimate of the bacterial growth and assess risk before they enter the water. We began by piloting these cards in the UK at our community lab in Guildford, and initial comparisons between the R cards and those more accepted methods like the IDEX ColiAlert seemed great, and we're continuing to validate the R cards this season, partnering with Niagara College. There's been a few times when I've gone out testing this, and I remember thinking at one point after a few attempts using this new method, okay, I'm finally getting the hang of this. And then, while demoing the test, a gust of wind blew my card completely off the tray and covered it in sand, and it was completely garbage. So we iterated. We revised workflows to ensure samples were collected sterilely and didn't contaminate results, and we've moved to clipboards to keep those cards in place. All of this was based on what volunteers experienced in the field, and we are still working to revise the protocol and test kit this season. But building better tools only solves part of the challenge communities face. Because once that data starts flowing in at scale, you have to trust it. And even with careful data entry, issues can still show up. While working with open data sets for the 2025 Canadian watershed reports, we found values that were physically impossible. Water temperatures of well over 1,000 degrees, pH values above 14, misplaced decimals, and more. Which was a little concerning because if your creek is actually 1,000 degrees, you probably have bigger problems. But the important point is this. These weren't failures of people. They were opportunities for us to improve the system for everyone. So we began rebuilding our data platform to better support the people collecting the data, make those errors visible earlier, improve the data structure, and rethink the way data is visualized and interpreted on the data platform. Big goals. Our new data platform is here, officially launched last fall, and we've added several layers of quality assurance directly into the workflow. We have equipment limits to prevent people from entering those impossible values outside of an equipment's range, automated checks that flag results as soon as an observation is uploaded, and review tools so that problems can be corrected early, not many months later. And the goal really isn't to police the data, it's to make possible issues visible while data is still being collected and reviewed and improving trust. Because trust in the data is what allows that monitoring to turn into action. With these QA systems in place, we've been able to clean the chloride data for the Lake Erie Rangers and begin identifying those trends and hotspots across the basin. But here's the challenge. I have put a lot of work into this chloride dashboard, and I think it's pretty awesome. But not every organization has the capacity to build dashboards like this from raw data. So we started asking ourselves a different question. How do we embed data interpretation directly into our data platform? Now, when someone uploads a test result, it's immediately compared against relevant water quality guidelines and those local rules of thumb. Results are flagged green, orange, or red with information on what each threshold is and what it means for water quality health. So our question can then shift. Instead of asking, is this data correct? Does it have errors? We can start asking that question that people actually care about and that we get really so often at Water Rangers. Is my lake healthy? As a critical part of our updates, we've ensured that these new features carry through our API and integrate directly into DataStream so that that same data can support broader research and decision-making efforts. But at the center of all of this are people. In Lake Erie Rangers, our volunteers are not just participants. They are co-creators. They identify water quality problems, and they help refine tools and interpretation systems, sharing their knowledge of local conditions. And their dedication is extraordinary. Over the past few years, we've trained more than 100 volunteers to test regularly, 210 different testing locations across the area, and nearly 20,000 data points collected for baseline chemistry, qualitative data, and parameters of concern. And when I asked our volunteers to start sharing their stories with me, many seemed really surprised, but none of this work would be possible without their passion and commitment. And they all come from different backgrounds. We have Tom, which you guys have heard so much about, former CFIA, Swathi, and then our youngest volunteer, Belle, as well. And they all really care so much about their sites. They take initiative and have ownership over their sites. And more than one volunteer has actually asked me to cover their sites if they can't make a testing weekend, which just shows how important this is to them. And something really powerful happens when that kind of commitment is shared across a bigger network through partnerships with organizations like the River Institute, Bay Area Restoration Council, Caldwell First Nation, schools, and research collaborators. Those data platform tools that make collecting and understanding data easier, and integration into those systems like DataStream and bigger watershed reporting tools. All of this work becomes larger than any single program. So when I think back to all of that effort, the travel, the muddy shoes, the calibration, and all of the care our volunteers pour into collecting this data, I don't think that the most important thing that we're building is a data set. I think we're building a stronger model for community monitoring. And that's what the Lake Erie Rangers framework has really taught us, not just how to collect more community data to fill gaps, but how to build monitoring systems where tools are tested in real conditions, data quality is built directly into the workflow, and communities and researchers improve the processes together over time. Because when communities co-design those tools, data systems, and interpretation, community science becomes trusted science. And that's what we're building together. So I wanted to give a deep thank you to the funders who have supported our work for Lake Erie Rangers and our data platform rebuild, as well as all of the partners who have provided feedback on our test kits, and especially our volunteers. Thank you.